Hi, it's John, and welcome to the channel. 6:07 a.m., Monday, July the 28th, with the big blue mug of coffee. I hope you're having a great day today. Hope you had a great weekend. I've got a controversial subject today. Great way to start a video. Hope you had a good weekend. I left Calgary on Saturday to get away from the rain. It's been raining all July. Went to Waterton Lakes. Absolutely beautiful. A hidden gem here in Alberta, way down in the south. Came right back to Calgary on Saturday night. It was raining. It's been raining ever since. It's just been awful. I hope August is better. But enough with my weather woes. Today I want to talk about a controversial subject. And this is a subject I've been thinking more and more about the more and more we talk about natural resource projects in this country, in Alberta and in your country of Canada. The more and more we hear about Mark Carney giving a veto to Aboriginal groups here over the natural resource projects, which he's fine with. He doesn't have to make a decision if they veto the project. So that's perfectly fine with him. And he's fine with that. He doesn't want oil and gas pipelines. He doesn't. And the more and more I hear about Aboriginal groups, they get in the way of natural resource projects. But I did a video back in mid-June where I said, I think we need to be less adversarial and more persuasive with Aboriginal groups. I had just spoken with Mitch Sylvester from the Alberta Prosperity Project. He suggested the same thing. But I did a video a few days ago saying anybody that gets in the way of natural resource projects in Alberta or Canada and they're getting in the way of prosperity should be cut off. That includes provinces and Aboriginal groups. And I stand by that as well. If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. I think I said that in that video. And I believe that. There are a lot of Canadians who are pissed off at Aboriginal groups in Canada. But I think the Aboriginal people themselves should be pissed off, not only with the government of Canada, but be pissed off with the people who are supposed to be doing good by them, and that would be their leaders, because you're getting ripped off. You know, you can say the Canadian government gives Aboriginal people money, but that's not true. It's the taxpayers of Canada who give Aboriginals money here. This is, I think, the biggest scandal in the country, and it needs to be addressed, and nobody talks about this. And if, as a Canadian taxpayer, I'm pissed off about this, and you should be as well. And again, Aboriginal people should be really pissed off because you're being screwed. I have a saying, there will never be reconciliation because the grift will have to end. Somebody's making a lot of money in this country, and it's not filtering down to the people who are supposed to benefit from it. There's that old saying, why is the chief's driveway always paved? It may be insensitive, but it's true. What does grift mean? Grift means engage in petty or small-scale swindling. I think maybe I should change my saying and not use the word grift, but use extortion. The practice of obtaining something, especially money, through force or threats. So what have I been thinking all along? Well, I've been thinking, how much money does the Canadian taxpayer put into Indigenous affairs in this country? We'll just say Indigenous affairs. How much money per year do we spend on this? And how many people in the country are considered Indigenous? How much are they getting on a yearly basis? If you divided the amount we give by the amount of people who get it. So let's take a look here. I asked ChatGPT the following question. How much money on an annual basis does the government of Canada give to each Indigenous household in Canada? So it's going to refer to ISC, which is Indigenous Services Canada, estimated annual spending per person. Check this out. In 2023-2024, ISC's actual total spending was about $46.1 billion. That's according to Indigenous Services Canada, right here. Funding for Indigenous specific priorities across multiple agencies was estimated around $30.5 billion in 2023-24, rising to $32 billion in 2024-25. Budget Canada. Based on an Indigenous population of approximately 1.8 million, that's 2021 census data from Statistics Canada, that equates to roughly $17,000 to $20,000 per person per year. And keep in mind, Indigenous people don't pay taxes, so that's worth a lot more. Now, my question to you, if you're an Indigenous person, are you benefiting from the Canadian taxpayers' dollars to the tune of $17,000 to $20,000 per person per year? Now, that's per person per year. Is that how much you're getting from Indigenous services in this country? I don't think you are. If there's 3 people in a family, that's $51,000 to $60,000 extra a year. How much would you benefit? And how much would it change your life, Mr. and Mrs. Indigenous person, if the government of Canada just cut you a check for that money, as opposed to filtering it through all these Indigenous agencies and the people who are supposed to filter that money down to you? Because according to the Fraser Institute, despite almost tripling Indigenous program spending since 2015, living standards on reserves have barely improved. Here's the money that was given out in 2015. This is up to 2021. It's at $32 billion. And this is the standard of living. First Nations Community Wellbeing Score has hardly moved. This is a scandal that this continues to happen. It's a scandal that Indigenous people continue to allow this to happen to them. They'd be better off if the government of Canada just wrote them a check. Here's $17,000. Your life would be improved immeasurably. Instead, it's got to get filtered through the federal government. It's got to get filtered through your Indigenous services groups. And folks, there's a hell of a lot of them out there. You go over here to the Canadian website. This is all the money that gets spent. These pages go on for 30, 40 pages of all these groups getting all this money. How is this benefiting Aboriginals at all in this country? And why do Canadians continue to pay all this money? This is a huge scandal. And it never gets addressed. And we have these groups holding up the prosperity of Canada and holding up the prosperity of Alberta while their people continue to suffer. When I was out on May 3rd at the Independence Rally, I think it was the first one after the election, on the legislature steps in Edmonton, there was a group of Indigenous people there who yelled and screamed through the whole rally. They weren't asked to leave. They get the pass of the Indigenous people. There's no cop in this country that would usher Indigenous people off the Alberta legislature property. They wouldn't do it. It'd be a scandal across the country. They screamed and yelled, and I stopped at the beginning and I said, listen, maybe you should listen to what we're talking about here today as the independence movement, because you're getting screwed over by Canada. I think we have a lot more in common than you might think. Alberta, we get screwed over by Canada when it comes to our natural resources and our prosperity. So are Indigenous groups. Canadian taxpayers, if you look at it from the standpoint of the $46 billion that was first stated, that's $25,000 a year for each and every Indigenous person in this country. And they're not benefiting from that at all. And Canadian taxpayers are getting fleeced. There will never be reconciliation because the extortion will have to end. Someone is making a lot of money, and it's not the Indigenous people. It's time for the Indigenous people to rise up against the people who are supposed to be doing good for them and against the government that keeps feeding this beast. That's it. It just bothers me, and I've been thinking about that for a long time. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Also, please, give it a thumbs up, like the video, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications. I'll see you in the next one.